Welcome to the United States of America. I have made it to Southern California, currently sitting in my tent in the small town of Campo, right on the Mexican border. And tomorrow I start my 4,300 kilometer journey north on the Pacific Crest Trail. Hopefully in about 4 months, I'll be standing at the US-Canada border in northern Washington, telling you guys that I've completed the trail. Very excited to be here. Cannot wait to share the journey with you all.
Setting foot on the Pacific Crest Trail for the first time was a magical moment. A moment I had dreamed about for years. One I wasn't sure would ever actually come to pass. Touching that southern terminus monument, gazing north towards endless adventure, taking those first steps, it all felt like the beginning of something truly amazing. I had no idea what the next week or month would look like. I had no idea what challenges lay ahead or who I would meet along the way. All I knew is that there were 2,650 miles of trail in front of me, and I couldn't wait to get started. I've hiked long trails before. In fact, I've built my life around hiking long trails over the last few years. I've seen some incredible places that only while hiking anyone could ever see. It's really a special thing, putting one foot in front of the other, overcoming struggle, doubt and pain, and experiencing wild places that are impossible to access via any road. I've found myself searching for longer and longer trails, craving more time in nature, and an experience that would push me to my limits. The Pacific Crest Trail, the pinnacle of through hiking, promised to be that experience. A trail with a storied history, a vibrant community, and unmatched beauty. One of the longest hiking trails on planet Earth, traversing the entire United States of America from Mexico to Canada. And so I set off from Western Australia to the Western United States, and the journey began.
So here's the Southern Terminus Monument, and as you can see right behind me, that is the border wall. Pretty big and ominous. But this is my start point, and we are now heading into the desert, the Southern California desert. Let's do it.
The Pacific Crest Trail is divided into 5 main sections. The first, when heading north, is the Southern California desert. It's typically quite hot and dry, and a challenging introduction to the trail. I started alone, with pretty much no plan past the first day or two. You never really know what the trail will throw at you, so during a hike that will likely take half an entire year, there isn't much point planning too far ahead.
I've made it into camp for my first night on the PCT. Pretty cool feeling. I'm gonna get dinner on and go watch the sunset. My campsite here is in a really cool spot. It's like atop this little hill. Yeah, there's a view over the lake and it's just really special. Very, very blessed to be here.
I tend to lean towards solo hiking, especially on long distance trails. I love pushing myself and walking big miles, and I'm also just a natural introvert. I was fully prepared to walk the entire 2,650 miles on the Pacific Crest Trail alone, but I also knew that the hiking community was a big part of the trail, and I was excited to connect with other crazy people on the same crazy adventure as me. By the end of day 2, I had already met a couple of strangers, Lisa and Chris, and we camped together and traded stories from our first 48 hours on trail. We stayed in touch during the next couple of days, and we linked up with another hiker, an Australian named Dan, during our first major town stop on day 4. I never thought I would be the type of hiker to be part of a trail family. It just wasn't my style, at least not usually. But by the end of week 1, I couldn't imagine hiking without these 3 strangers that I had just met. And I was excited to share this experience with them for however long it lasted.
Did you hitch?
Nah.
We've started bright and early this morning, heading up towards Jacinto Peak, which is one of the tallest points in Southern California. There's talk of snow up there, and either way there'll be a lot of climbing today, but the crew's excited. I'm excited. Hitting the town of Idlewild tomorrow, which will be really nice. Whew.
The Pacific Crest Trail passes nearby lots of towns, an essential part of resupplying throughout the trek. Sometimes walking into town was possible, sometimes hitchhiking was required. Regardless, town days were always something we looked forward to, even more so when we decided it was necessary to have a full day off trail, commonly known as a 0 day. Idlewild was our first 0 day town, and we enjoyed our time eating, relaxing, and hanging out with fellow hikers.
Don't film your food, because you really get your food.
As much as I enjoyed town days, I was always excited to get back on trail and continue making progress north. We would attempt our first side mission off the Pacific Crest Trail, San Jacinto Peak, shortly after leaving Idlewild. It's one of Southern California's tallest mountains, and the snowy ascent was a stark difference to the warm desert floor we had been used to so far. Before starting the PCT, I had planned to explore a bunch of side trails off the main route. I wanted to experience as much as I could, even if that meant some extra miles here and there. San Jacinto was the first of many side trails, and reaching the summit with my newfound friends just as the sun was setting was a pretty magical moment. By week 3, our bodies were starting to adapt to the demands of the trail. As our trail legs grew stronger, we began to slowly increase our daily mileage. Summer wouldn't last forever, and through hiking the Pacific Crest Trail is only possible during the warmer months of the year. We started our trek at the end of April, and by October, some sections would become impassable due to snow and colder weather. We would have to limit our 0 days throughout the trek and keep a consistent pace. We did take our second day off though in the beautiful town of Big Bear Lake, and there our trail family grew. By day 19, 4 had turned to 7, with Patrik, Emma and Leah joining the group.
Nice.
Buddy,
I like that.
found 2 rocks.
Drugs.
Hiking with a large trail family has its perks, that's for sure, but it also does put some limitations on each individual. You no longer have full freedom to hike your own pace and distance each day. If you want to stick together, each person has to make compromises. If you told me before the trail that I'd be slowing down for other hikers, I probably would have laughed at you. I like moving fast and pushing myself to cover big distances, overcoming struggle and testing my capabilities. But it didn't take me long to forget all my preconceived notions of speed and scale. This ragtag group of 7 that I had somehow fell into brought me more joy and purpose than simply walking a little bit faster. Hiking as a group also brings with it practical benefits as well. Logistics become less of a headache when you can share the load with others, and safety is drastically improved. Someone always has your back in potentially dangerous situations. The sometimes intense feeling of loneliness that so many thru hikers experience is dampened as well. Being away from home and your loved ones for this long is tough, but this new type of family brings camaraderie and a sense of belonging that makes all the difference.
It's another side mission summit day here on the Pacific Crest Trail. I'm currently on my way up to Mount Baden-Powell, which is a fairly iconic mountain on the PCT. A lot of climbing though, so it's going to be a tough day.
Mount Baden-Powell would be the biggest challenge so far on the PCT. It's almost 3,000 meters or 10,000 feet tall, and the entire climb was covered in snow, which most of our group didn't have much experience with. It was days like this when the benefits of hiking in a group were most evident. We could ascend together, making sure each of us made it safely to the summit. Over the next 3 days, our group crossed paths with a handful of different trail angels who spoiled us with food, drink, and conversation. The kindness of complete strangers would end up being one of the highlights of the entire PCT, and it was more than just free food. It was the stories shared and laughs exchanged, the small moments that make life on trail so much more fulfilling.
Yeah. You're like Rocky Balboa. Yeah.
Oh wow, it smells. You can take it.
Wow.
There you go.
Thank you so much, mate.
The water. He's eating his own. His cold so go. Fruit dance.
The SoCal Desert. It got that name for a reason. It's hot, it's dry, and sometimes it's just kind of miserable. The challenge of this trail was half the reason it was so appealing to me though. Barely anyone who starts actually makes it all the way to the end. In fact, a lot of people quit early on in the desert. Heat waves pose an even bigger hurdle. It's already really hot, but occasionally it gets really, really hot. During a heatwave, hiking through the night becomes a lot more appealing, and we decided to spend one particular night covering as many miles as we could while it was cool.
We are hiking the infamous Los Angeles Aqueduct tonight. Not only that, we're planning to hike about 40 miles continuously all the way to the town of Tehachapi. Alright, we are 5 miles in so far. As you can tell, the sun is gone. We've got a long way to go tonight, but feeling good and looking forward to some antics and shenanigans on the LA Aqueduct.
Is it nice? Actually, surprisingly good.
That's so funny. Oh my gosh. Candy stick.
Yeah.
Alright, that is a marathon done. 26 miles. We are about an hour away from sunrise. Still plenty left to hike, but getting that light back is going to make this a whole lot easier. That's for sure. Wow. "35 miles done, and all of a sudden it's getting very, very hot, which is the whole reason we hiked last night, to avoid this heat. Luckily, there's only about 5 miles to go. "16 hours later, 41 miles or 66 kilometers walked. I've made it to the road into Tehachapi. I need to catch a ride and get some bloody sleep."
Tehachapi is a pretty big milestone. It's the last major town before the end of the desert. There was less than 150 miles left until we would reach the Sierra Mountain Range, section 2 of the Pacific Crest Trail. I ended up hiking alone after leaving Tehachapi, for the first time since day 1 on trail. I spent the next 5 days solo, avoiding the heat where possible and chipping away at the final miles of this section. Usually I would love hiking alone for days and weeks on end, but by the time I reached the tiny town of Kennedy Meadows South, the gateway to the Sierra, I was ready to rejoin my trail family and head into this next chapter of the journey together. Kennedy Meadows South is an iconic stop. Hundreds of PCT through hikers gather here, stocking up on gear and supplies and sharing information regarding the snowpack and weather ahead. Entering the Sierra for the first time is a little nerve-wracking, that's for sure, but honestly, I just couldn't wait to get into the mountains. We are entering the Sierra Nevada. After 41 days of walking through the desert, we are heading up to altitude to a whole different environment, one of the most beautiful places on earth. I am so bloody excited. If you ask any PCT through hiker what their favourite section of the trail is, the answer will likely be the Sierra. It's a special, seemingly endless, untouched wilderness right in the middle of the most populous state in the US. Big mountains, beautiful forests, wildlife everywhere, and essentially no civilization for the next few weeks on trail. This kind of remote, truly wild environment is beautiful, but certainly brings with it some challenges as well. Longer stints between towns means heavier food carries and more self-sufficiency is required. It's also a lot harder for rescue services to reach you, which is quite relevant considering the Sierra is by far the most dangerous section of the PCT. Higher altitudes, river crossings, peaks and passes covered in snow and ice, not to mention the higher prevalence of black bears and mountain lions. We were prepared though, and we were well aware of the risks of entering the Sierra. Precautions were taken, including carrying a bear canister to store food safely and adding microspikes to our gear for better grip on ice and snow. Entering the mountains as a group, opposed to solo, would also be a major factor in staying safe and making it all the way through into Northern California. Just woken up, it is midnight, brewed up a quick coffee and about to head out to summit Mount Whitney. Hopefully it should take us no longer than about 4 or 5 hours. I think we've got about 15 kilometers and maybe 1,500 meters of elevation gain, so should be a bit of fun. The Sierra mountain range is home to, you guessed it, a lot of mountains, including the tallest in the contiguous United States, Mount Whitney. At over 4,400 meters or 14,500 feet above sea level, it's a massive challenge in its own right, but even more so as a side mission off the Pacific Crest Trail. Climbing such an iconic peak was something not many PCT through hikers wanted to miss though, even if it added an extra day or so to this section of the trail. We were determined to reach the summit of Mount Whitney for sunrise and joined a multitude of other hikers who set off early to tackle the big climb. We've just passed 4,000 meters. It is almost 3 a.m, so still pitch black, but getting fairly close to the summit now. It's exciting. Getting colder for sure. The air is getting thinner. That's very noticeable, but I'm feeling so good, which is incredibly encouraging. Yeah. Excited for the top. That is so epic.
Don't get too close to the edge, it will freak you out.
Made it to the summit of Whitney. 4,500 meters almost. The most incredible sunrise I've almost ever seen. Can kind of see the trail behind me where we came up. Just crazy. And there's lots of PCT through hikers up here. Incredible morning for it. And yeah, pretty blessed to be here. I felt right at home up on that mountaintop, with the sun rising over one of the most beautiful landscapes I'd ever seen, amongst friends and strangers that were all on the same crazy journey as me. It was a morning I would never forget, and a small taste of what was to come in the Sierras.
That was insane.
The Sierra high passes are some of the most challenging parts of the trail. There are many that we would have to cross over during the next few weeks, and they were often covered in snow and ice. Forester Pass was the first, and also marked the highest point on the entire Pacific Crest Trail. Forester Pass, just a tad over 13,000 feet. Some of the best views I've ever seen. And that's saying something because we were up Mount Whitney just 24 hours ago. So incredible. We got to go down here now and then I guess back into the valley, but it's pretty special. That is Mather Pass complete. The descent was a little sketchy, mainly because there was no real track, but made it down with no problems. And now a lovely walk in the valley awaits. It is so beautiful.
Their flavor, I guess.
I've made it to camp just before dark, almost a marathon today. I am camping all alone as the rest of the group are a bit further back, not exactly sure where. In the morning I've got a big climb up to the iconic Mule Pass, which I'm very much looking forward to. Waking up to this every single morning does not feel like real life. I'm walking past this river, water falling down a valley. There's snow-capped mountains surrounding me, the sun hitting their peaks. I've walked past a handful of deer already in the first mile this morning. My mind is blown here in the Sierra Nevada. Whilst our trail family of 7 had been together for over 5 weeks now, we didn't always walk as a group throughout each day. We would team up to cross high passes and meet up for lunch at beautiful swimming spots, but in between we generally hiked at our own paces and were often miles apart on the trail. Usually we agreed on a camping spot each night so we could reset and start the following day together, but sometimes it didn't work out exactly as we planned. I found myself camping alone occasionally, and it can be pretty hard to regroup without self-service or a way to communicate effectively. Sometimes I would wait for the group to catch up, other times I powered ahead, especially when an iconic location like Mule Pass wasn't too far away.
This is by far the snowiest section of trail we've been on, but I'm almost at the pass now, and it is so beautiful out here. Wow.
Even in the wild of the Sierra, I would never stay alone on trail for long. Our little family always found our way back to each other, which was a comfort I never knew I would cherish so much. Accessing towns isn't easy in the mountains, and after 2 weeks of long days at altitude, we had only had a single day off trail. Reaching the town of Mammoth Lakes after a couple of particularly long days was a welcomed respite, and we took a full day off, eating lots and enjoying the downtime.
We had a brilliant 0 day in the town of Mammoth yesterday. Rest, resupply. A couple of the trail fam were dealing with some injuries, but most of us are back onto the PCT today. We're going past Devil's Postpile National Monument, which is super exciting, and over the next few days heading in to Yosemite National Park. I cannot wait.
Before even learning about the Pacific Crest Trail, Yosemite National Park was a place I'd always wanted to visit. As an avid rock climber, hiker, and general nature addict, it seemed, from afar, to be almost the pinnacle of outdoor adventure. To get an opportunity to visit the iconic Yosemite Valley off the PCT would be an opportunity that I wouldn't take for granted. Dan and I decided to hike about 40 kilometers into the national park, along the John Muir Trail, instead of hitchhiking in via the road. It ended up being a great decision, with even the outskirts of Yosemite National Park being some of the most spectacular landscapes I had ever walked amongst. The valley itself lived up to all my expectations. The waterfalls, the towering granite, it was pure bliss, besides the crowds. Half Dome is probably the most famous hike in Yosemite Valley, and permits typically sell out fast. We didn't plan ahead, but in a stroke of luck, 6 permits became available the day we arrived, and the trail family were quick to snatch them up.
We've reached the cables, the famous cables at Half Dome, and we are going straight up, literally vertical. Oh gosh. You guys look freaking badass. Holy crap.
Our sunrise summit of Half Dome in Yosemite National Park wasn't on my PCT bingo card, but it was certainly one of the highlights of the entire trail.
Oh my god.
9 or 10?
Leaving a place like Yosemite National Park is never easy, but Canada was waiting and we still had a long way to go. Yosemite marks the beginning of the end for the Sierra Nevada. The highest passes and biggest mountains were behind us, and we would now transition into the lower altitude, less wild environments of Northern California. The Sierra was tough and beautiful, exactly what I was looking for. To be able to share every challenge and also every picture-perfect view with this epic group of humans was an absolute privilege. It was also a necessity. It's hard to imagine successfully making it through without them. The experience certainly wouldn't have been as fulfilling or as memorable alone. The town of South Lake Tahoe marks a new chapter on the Pacific Crest Trail. Section 2, the Sierra Mountains, were complete, and Section 3, Northern California, would now begin. It would also mark a new chapter for our trail family. Dan and I had been eyeing off our biggest side trip yet, the THRU Rim Trail, a 265 kilometre long loop around the enormous Lake Tahoe. Everyone, even those closest to you on trail, have different priorities, and as the saying goes, you should always hike your own hike. For Dan and I, that meant an almost week-long excursion off the PCT to experience Lake Tahoe in full. For the rest of our trail family, that meant pushing on towards Canada. We would keep in touch and hope to reconnect somewhere ahead on trail, but knew we would be unlikely to regroup anytime soon, if at all. We said our goodbyes and headed our separate ways, not knowing exactly what the next few days or weeks would look like. Love you all. I guess that's the beauty of through hiking. Nothing is guaranteed. Planning too far ahead is pointless because the trail takes you down unexpected paths at unexpected times. Our job was just to put one foot in front of the other. Lake Tahoe was magical, a worthy side mission. Dan and I put in some big miles to circumnavigate the lake in 4 incredible days. Sunsets, sunrises, pristine trail, and new friends who went out of their way to make our lives a little easier. Ed and Allison, 2 Lake Tahoe locals, gave up their home for us both before and after our Tahoe Rim Trail adventure. Clean sheets, yummy food, and great chats. Ed dropped Dan and I back to the PCT as well, and we continued into Northern California, excited for what was ahead.
As of today, I have been walking all day, every day, for 11 weeks straight. This is also going to be the longest distance I've traveled in a single week on trail. I'm feeling fit, I'm feeling strong, and today's going to be another big day on the PCT. We have just crossed the marathon mark for the day, stopping at this incredible viewpoint for dinner. Planning to do, about 50 kilometers today, so not too far to camp, but we're hungry and we couldn't pass this up.
With a trail family to catch and some huge on-trail milestones just around the corner, early starts and late finishes became the new normal. We were almost at the halfway point of the PCT, and not long after that we would finally reach the end of California and enter our second state, Oregon. Our trail legs had well and truly come in. The desert built a great base fitness and the Sierra Mountains had made our legs strong. I felt indestructible. 50 kilometers in a day seemed almost impossible 3 months ago, but now we were walking that distance almost every single day. We were making great progress through Northern California, and after 82 days of walking, we reached our biggest milestone so far.
We have officially made it to the halfway point of the Pacific Crest Trail. This is the halfway marker. 1,325 miles done, 1,325 miles to go.
$1,325 miles to go. That seemed like a lot, but in that moment, there was zero doubt in my mind that I would make it. Yeah, every day out here was a challenge. The heat in NorCal was brutal, and we were sacrificing sleep most nights to hit our daily mileage goals. But I was loving every single second, every single step.
Canada.
1 million miles.
Northern California is considered by most to be the least interesting section of the Pacific Crest Trail. I would agree, but that isn't to say it's at all boring. While it doesn't have the highlights of the Sierra Nevada, every day was still incredible. Lassen Volcanic National Park was awesome. Bernie Falls absolutely blew my mind, and Mount Shasta, well, there's a reason it's revered by the locals. A powerful, beautiful mountain that we spotted on the horizon days before reaching it. We took a day off at Mount Shasta town, which after back-to-back 200-mile weeks was well deserved. We enjoyed the downtime, eating an enormous amount of food, replacing battered shoes, and reconnecting with trail friends, including Emma, who we had caught back up to. We left Shasta as a trio, and with only about a week left in California, we were excited to get moving. It was a really strange feeling, having walked for 3 months straight, heading north the entire time, and still being in the exact same state that we started in. California is long, but never dull. It's diverse and stunning, and as a first-time visitor to the United States, it was the perfect introduction. The kindness of the people, the mind-blowing landscapes, and a trail like none I'd ever walked before. California gave me some of the best months of my life, but I was ready to move on, and Oregon was waiting.
Today is my 97th day walking the length of California on the Pacific Crest Trail. 97 days in one state. But that does change today. In about an hour, I'll be crossing the California-Oregon border, reaching Section 4 and State number 2 on the Pacific Crest Trail.
Pretty cool.
We made it to Oregon, State number 2 on the PCT.
I'm just literally in the back.
Section 4.
Section 4, begin.
Guys, it's your first time in Oregon.
Yeah, it is.
Wow.
So it's nothing.
Yeah, just candid, you know, just us, just chatting.
So
Good
funny.
one, funny.
Ooh. I've just reached a camping spot where I'm going to set up for the night. 50 kilometers walked. I'm only a few miles out of the town of Ashland, which will be our first town stop in Oregon. I'm going to walk in there tomorrow and probably spend most of the day, if not a night, in town, which will be really cool. But happy to be here, new state, so exciting.
Oh my god.
After a brief stopover in the lovely town of Ashland, graciously hosted by a fellow Australian, Caroline, we dove headfirst into this new chapter of our journey.
Hi, hikers! Come back soon.
Oregon is the shortest section of the Pacific Crest Trail, both in distance and time. It's a flat state, at least relative to California and Washington, and like most PCT through hikers in this section, we're excited to test our trail legs and make some solid progress towards Canada over the next couple of weeks. While Oregon is relatively short and quick, there was so much I was looking forward to. The PCT passes through 7 national parks, and Oregon's Crater Lake National Park was one I had been eagerly awaiting since starting the trail. As we drew near though, smoke began to fill the skies. West Coast wildfire season was in full swing, and there were some that had started burning nearby. We had been lucky so far. There were some devastating wildfires in parts of California. Many hikers had been forced off trail, with hundreds of PCT miles closing. But up until this point, we had made it through the affected parts of the trail before they closed. We hadn't needed to skip almost any miles. Breathing in the smoky air as we approached Crater Lake was a harsh reality check. Navigating wildfires are unfortunately just a part of hiking the PCT, and there would likely be plenty more to worry about as we continued north. Crater Lake lived up to all my expectations. It's the deepest lake in the United States and had some of the most picturesque views I had ever seen, even as blue skies turned to a smoky grey. We did have to detour around almost 100 miles of trail north of Crater Lake. Fires were burning and the trail was closed for the safety of hikers and emergency services. Skipping PCT miles was something I desperately wanted to avoid, and I had walked almost every single mile so far. But wildfires can literally be a matter of life and death, and sometimes there was no viable reroute around closed sections of trail, unless you wanted to walk along highways for hundreds of miles. I had come to peace with skipping some of the PCT, the closed sections, after seeing the devastation wildfires were causing. And I'd already walked about 300 extra miles on side trips, so it would more than even out in the end. I was holding out hope that no more of the trail ahead would be closed, and if it did, that there would be reroutes put in place that I could hike instead.
I woke up with frost on my tent this morning. It was very, very cold last night, but I'm warming up now that I'm moving and very excited to be walking through Three Sisters Wilderness. Absolutely stunning area.
Three Sisters Wilderness was like nothing we had seen so far on the PCT. The rugged, volcanic trail was tough underfoot, but the landscapes were breathtaking. We had only spent about a week in Oregon so far, and we had been averaging about 50 kilometers per day. We were tired, and reaching the road into the town of Bend was a welcome sight. Emma's sister Iris lived in Bend, and she kindly offered to take us in for a couple days off trail.
Pick a car, like any car.
Bend was a great time, one of my favourite towns along the PCT, and we made the most of our 00. Our time off trail continued after Bend as we drove further north in Oregon to Cascade Locks, a trail town that hosts the PCT Days THRU Hiker Festival every year. It was a weekend full of past, current and future PCTers, all gathering together to celebrate the trail. By the time we rejoined the PCT where we had left, it had been 4 wonderful days off, a great reset for the mind and body before walking the final 1,000 or so kilometers to Canada. Because Oregon is typically flatter and easier walking than most of the PCT, and it's also at a point along the trail where peak hiking fitness is setting in, it's really the perfect time to attempt the 24-hour challenge. A ridiculous, classic through hiking side quest where those crazy enough hike for 24 hours straight with the goal of walking as many miles as possible. Of course, we were keen to give it a go, and after 4 days off trail, our legs were as fresh as they were ever going to be.
We have woken up at midnight to do something a little stupid today, the 24-hour challenge. We have chosen to go from midnight to midnight. Dan, Emma and I are going to suffer a little bit today. I'm just stopping for my first break so far after about 7 hours on trail. Gonna do 15 minutes, set a timer on my phone, filtering some water. I gotta tape up my heel because I had a rock stuck in there and I'm getting the beginnings of a blister, so I want to avoid that, and I'll probably do a little stretch and then keep going. Whew. Okay, it is midday, the halfway point, 12 hours in, 12 hours to go. I have walked 41 miles, or about 66 kilometers, so pretty happy with that. I'm definitely going to slow down in the second half as I start to fatigue. The legs are definitely starting to feel it, and I think I've got a bit more uphill on the second half as well. So going to have a lunch break pretty soon, take 30 or 40 minutes off the legs, and then hopefully come home pretty strong.
And they have trail magic in Cascade Locks, and they wanted.
I ran into a sobo who was really hiking up.
You guys are all doing your...
Oh no!
Ah! I should have hit you. You were there.
Dan has caught up to me and we have just hit a pretty massive milestone, 100 kilometers or just under 65 miles. Somehow we're feeling pretty good still. The sun is setting in an hour or two, I think. So we're getting close to our midnight cutoff, and we think we can make it all the way to Timberline Lodge, which is kind of was kind of the big goal if we felt good. So we'll end up doing like 75 miles or something ridiculous, but we've got to keep moving for the next few hours, and I think we can do it.
Help me. Call an ambulance.
After 24 hours of hiking, we've made it to camp right near Timberline Lodge. 123 kilometers, 76 miles. Dan and I are both absolutely shattered. We've got some serious butt chafe, some seriously sore legs, but we're extremely satisfied and quite proud, I think, of the effort we put in today. Tomorrow morning we'll head to Timberline Lodge, grab a buffet, and hopefully let these legs recover a bit. See you then.
Somehow we made it through the challenge unscathed, and a long sleep, alongside a massive intake of calories at Timberline Lodge, almost made us feel human again. Emma didn't quite make it to the lodge during the 24 hours, but very quickly caught up, and we began our final push to the Oregon-Washington border. A big part of why I love through hiking so much is that it really forces you to find out what you're capable of. Hiking this far for this long will never be easy, and if you really want to make it to the end, overcoming self-doubt and self-perceived limitations is simply a requirement. The outdoors is such a unique arena for building confidence in yourself, and adding in the occasional extra challenge, at least for me, helps to build an unwavering belief in myself, a belief that I'm capable of so much more than I previously imagined. Bad weather is one of those challenges on trail that you can't control, and you've just got to battle through it. We hadn't had much rain on the PCT up until this point, but apparently Oregon didn't want us to leave and opened up the skies for our final 2 days. Every challenge brings a reward though. Sometimes it's confidence or belief in yourself. Sometimes it's just a waterfall.
We've made it to town, Cascade Locks, right on the border of Oregon and Washington. We were here about a week ago for PCT Days Trail Festival, but we are back on foot this time. We'll spend the night in town and then head into Washington tomorrow morning. We are crossing the Bridge of the Gods from Oregon into our final state, our final section of the PCT, Washington. Oh, it's been an incredible journey so far. Very excited for this final chapter.
It was kind of strange, finally stepping into Washington. I wasn't really sure how to feel. I was missing my wife, family and friends a lot. I hadn't seen any of them in 4 months, and I was starting to feel the draw back home. But I also knew that I was in the midst of the most incredible adventure of my life, and I really didn't want that to end. Washington would be a worthy final chapter. Pristine wilderness as far as the eye could see, and iconic, prominent mountains on every horizon. Within a few days of crossing the border, we reached Goat Rocks Wilderness, which we knew was a highlight for most PCT through hikers. It soon became a highlight for us as well. We had incredible conditions walking through and perfect views of the big Washington mountains. There really isn't much civilization along the PCT in Washington. Hitchhiking out to small towns was the only chance we would have to resupply, and in between roads there was nothing but forest and mountains. For the most part, I much preferred being out there anyway. There was a peace in the forest that you simply can't find in a town or city, and the mountains always feel like home to me. As much as I loved being out on trail, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't tired. After almost 5 months of walking, there was a deep fatigue setting in, both in the body and mind. I was finally allowing myself to think about the end, and that meant thinking about home and what was next. Canada was within sight, and I was ready to get there.
Not gonna lie, I am exhausted this morning. Yesterday was a tough day with a late finish, and today looks like it's gonna be similarly difficult, but on the bright side, we are heading out to Stevens Pass at the end of today and into the town of Leavenworth, where we're planning to take a day off tomorrow. Our first day off in over 2 weeks, which is super exciting. I think the bodies really need it.
Leavenworth would be our final 0 day, and we had a great time exploring the town, graciously hosted by some very friendly locals. We slept long and ate lots, knowing that the next week on trail, our final week on trail, wouldn't be easy. Another wildfire had closed a section of the PCT north of Leavenworth, but a reroute had been put in place. From the little information we could find, the reroute sounded really challenging, far from the pristine trail that we had been used to. It was a little daunting, as we were some of the first hikers taking this relatively unknown side trail around the closure, but it also sounded like a fun challenge.
We just passed the 2,500 mile marker, which is super exciting, and we've just reached the junction where we're turning off the PCT today. From here on out, there are fire closures, and so we're doing about a 40-mile reroute around those closures, which hopefully will keep us safe. It's supposed to be really beautiful even on the reroute, so kind of looking forward to it. Let's see how it goes.
On day 3 of the reroute, we had to cross a glacial pass with literally no trail to follow. We didn't see any other hikers that day, and we were in the middle of absolute nowhere. Yet I felt like I was right where I was meant to be, out there with 2 of my best mates, truly living. Through hiking tends to bring about strange dichotomies. I was both uncomfortable and completely at peace. I was tired, but had never felt more alive. I couldn't wait to finish this trail, but I also could have stayed out there forever.
We've made it back to the PCT after what feels like almost 3 days adventuring on a side mission around this closure. Well done, guys.
Well done.
To Canada.
Woo!
Good morning. on a very cold day 137. As you can see behind me, pretty spectacular views down at M plus the mountains. It's 3 days till we reach Canada. We are counting down every day now and hopefully dodging the weather all the way to the border. Let's go.
It's pretty hard to put into words what was going through my head during those last couple of days, during the final miles of a 2,650 mile journey. I had experienced so much over the last 4.5 months. I met so many incredible people and saw so many incredible places. To be on the precipice of finishing was honestly quite emotionally confusing. I was sad that it was ending, I was proud that I had made it, I was relieved that I could finally rest. I was fulfilled. That's actually probably the best way to describe how I was feeling. I got what I wanted from the trail. It was a great challenge. I felt like I had really tested myself. I spent plenty of time in the wilderness with the bears and the trees and the mountains. I had successfully thru-hiked the greatest trail on planet Earth. But I also got so much more from the Pacific Crest Trail than I ever imagined. I met my best mates, who I shared all the highs and lows with. I experienced generosity from complete strangers that I will forever be grateful for. I gained confidence and belief in myself. New passions and motivation was ignited in me. The Pacific Crest Trail changed my life, and touching that northern terminus was one of the most incredible feelings in the world, whatever exactly that feeling was. I reached the northern terminus of the Pacific Crest Trail after 139 days of walking. 139 of the best days of my life.
I'm like, wait, this isn't right. This isn't right.
We'll see you soon.
See you soon.